Attack on Toys is one of the cutest indie games ever developed. However, the aesthetic is not all this game has going for it, as it has many factions, workshop compatibility, and its very caring dev gives it a lot of potential. And that care shows as soon as you boot up the game, because just look at this intro, it's so charming. I'll say it again, but there is no denying Attack on Toys is one of the cutest games that has ever been made, and it more than delivers on its promise of making you feel like you're a toy in a giant world. Even something as small as jumping has that weightless feel a plastic army men would have. But there is far more to this game than just army men. There are entire fully fleshed out factions for action figures, Lego troopers, a couple mecha robots, and cows? Yeah, do pay attention to that actually, because these cows generate a lot of money you can use to bolster your team's capabilities. And believe me, you will want to do that because this game can actually get pretty difficult. I'll talk more in depth about that later, but first you need to understand every faction. See, your typical plastic soldier has a large variety of weapons at his disposal, but they're primarily Cold War era weapons, and your units don't perform the best in battle. In essence, your average army man isn't too smart. Here's a trick. Pummel them with bullets and put them down for good.
Would you like to know more?
The Lego soldiers also suffer from a case of just not being that great. They aren't the most accurate shots, and their arsenal primarily consists of World War II weapons. However, like all Legos, they are painfully hard and they can take a lot of damage before going down. Due to this, they are better off being left as base defense units. Your action figures, however, work exactly as you imagined they would when you were a child. They are the best soldiers, they're expert marksmen, they look cool, and they're equipped with the newest and hottest gear. On the offense, there is little stopping these guys, and to balance this, they are very expensive units. There is, however, one type of unit that dwarfs the power of the action figure. Yeah, you know him because there was always that kid who proclaimed automatic victory because of his robot toys. Seriously, these bots fire at incredibly high rates, and they are insanely accurate, and they take so much damage before dying. It really is like dealing with those power-tripping brat playground kids. Now lucky for you, however, you're able to enter any vehicle you want and lay absolute waste to these mindless robots and whomever else. And good thing is too, the vehicles control pretty well and they are more than easy to learn how to use. Of course, none of this matters if there isn't a game to play. Now, you do have the choice to play this as either a third-person shooter or an RTS. I won't go over this in depth since regardless of how you play the modes and all unit functions are the same. That being said, there are 3 game modes you can choose from. Invasion mode is simple enough. All you have to do is survive 10 waves of enemies. To do that, you're given a fair amount of resources to build up a defensive army and hold your ground against enemy soldiers, bugs, or even zombies. I do believe, however, this game mode can use some adjustments because after round 5, it can get impossibly difficult. I'll be saving most of my suggestions until the end, so stick around for that, but for now, let's move on to Skirmish. This mode is pretty simple. There are a bunch of other colors at war with each other, and in order for you to win, or lose, every HQ must be destroyed. To help with this, you're put in the build menu and have a limited amount of funds to get a small army running. After that, the war is on, and hopefully the starting army you built can keep your headquarters up. During the gameplay, you'll be able to place more units and structures, but not to the extent you could at the beginning, so select wisely. Conquest is pretty much the same as Skirmish, with the biggest difference being capturing points generates, well, points, and whoever is either the last team standing or reaches the point limit wins. Lastly, though not really a game mode, we have the toy box. Here you can set up your own battles, alter and edit your own maps, as well as use the workshop. And look, any game that lets you have even a little customization gets extra points in my book, and this game has some outright awesome maps on its workshop. I really love too how you're able to fully edit the workshop map, so if you want to alter or tweak things to your liking, that's more than possible. On top of that, the embracement of the toy aesthetic just keeps this game's charm through and through to the end. Literally, look at any of the maps in this game's shop. You can't tell me this isn't something a kid would conjure up. Beyond the maps, there's also some very minor adjustments you can make to your soldiers. When you rank up and earn plastic, you can alter these soldiers to have permanent hats, more guns upon starting a game, as well as backpacks that give you special perks. But for all this game's strengths, I do need to point out some flaws. Unlike many of the games I play, however, this one is actively still in development and the dev himself is very open to feedback. So, unlike what I normally do, I'll break these flaws up into minor issues and some major ones. I'll even throw in my suggestions so my criticisms aren't faceless. To start off, I think it's kind of odd that you can't scroll the menus or anything with the mouse wheel. It's not only inconvenient, but also really strange considering every game and program to ever exist allows for mouse wheel scrolling. I also think there needs to be more clarification on what does what on the menu. Take the Toys Hero profile for instance. Despite me having this game for over a year, I had zero clue you could change the faction you play as here until I began making this video. As I said earlier too, you can even buy permanent changes to your character, but I never would have guessed that until I stumbled across it by mistake. A small sidebar explaining all of this would go a long way for clarification. And whilst we're talking about the menu, hovering over these icons should display the names above them so that way you don't have to click on them to find out what they are. I also think it's really bizarre how the setting icon is way up here when everything else is down there. As for the game functionally, the camera can be pretty janky at times. It's at its worst when you spawn in the HQ, so a better zoom in should be able to fix that, though in cramped conditions the camera can tend to have the same problem. Finally, for this segment, I think some of the hats could give you small buffs like the backpacks do. The Sarge helmet in its infinite respect to the character could give you a damage boost. I also could see the helmet giving you a slight discount on all purchases as well as the officer hats having a small amount of soldiers automatically follow you into battle. But those are all small things against this game. I do believe there are some things that keep this game from truly being great. To start off, the multiplayer has a lot of issues. In fact, unless you're connected via LAN, there's no multiplayer at all. So if you want to play with friends, your best bet is to use something like Radman VPN or Hamachi, but even with this, it's very bare bones. In fact, there isn't even a lobby system, so you can't customize your teams or use mods. However, I could forgive all this if the experience was smooth, but unfortunately though, there are actually a ton of bugs me and my friend encountered when playing together for this review, and whilst they were very funny, I can easily see this being annoying for anyone attempting to have a serious match. Extreme player lag, comically tiny or large guns and such can all ruin the experience if you're trying to have a serious time, and the worst problem we encountered was the person who joined seems to have a rather severe issue with weapons firing. Just look at this footage for yourself.
That was 19 missiles and I have no ammo. Oh, it's doing the funny.
On top of this, if you're gonna put a multiplayer in the game, it shouldn't only be LAN-based. Believe me, I come from an era where screen cheating was a problem, but very few people play games that way anymore, and internet-based connectivity is 100% the way to go. But say you do stick to the single player, as most would. Even then, I do think one of the game modes needs an overhaul, namely Skirmish, because as it stands, there's really not much to separate it from Conquest mode. I think a good way to fix this would be to base the entire mode off of the billiard map, just two teams fighting and give them a ton of money to make it intense. Conquest can stay the same as it is, but give less money so it's more of a build up to an epic battle between all nations. But throughout it all, there is one universal thing this game needs to fix, and I saved it for last because it needs the most attention. The AI in this game is due for a major overhaul. More often than not, the units clump together and seem to mostly follow the same paths. I've also witnessed my helicopters being stuck in place before, as well as units performing less than ideally, shall we say. Now, I'm not a programmer, so I don't know how you'd go about fixing these exactly, but I do believe altering the behavior of some units could help. If some units were more likely to stay around the base while others advanced more, it could fix the issue of clumping quite a bit, as well as leave your base less vulnerable to attacks. I also think though the concept of squads and ranks applying to the AI could solve some problems. Let's say you have an action figure grunt. He's powerful and strong, so what if he could have 3 to 4 AIs follow him into battle? Another AI squad sees this and they choose to pick another path, opening the potential for flanks and better counterplay. On a similar note, I also find unless you know how to play the game the exact way it needs, it can be extremely easy to lose. One of the oddest choices this game made was during the setup stage you can select any unit from any faction, but once you're playing, however, this cannot be done at all. Instead, you're stuck with whatever faction you chose to play as. I think you should at least be able to purchase an upgrade mid-game that allows, say, a plastic army men to build Lego units or action figures and whatever else. If these core issues were resolved, this game would be really good. And look, I know I just spent a lot of time bashing this game, but I don't dislike it, and that's not the impression I want to give. It has strong bones. This game is definitely drinking its milk, but if it wants to be great, then Attack on Toys needs to start putting muscle on top of those bones. As the game stands now, it only has a lot of potential, but it's not fully reached it yet. But it's only $7 on Steam at the same time, which is more than affordable and worth the cost if you enjoyed the old 3DO Army Men games. So if this game looks like it'd be up your alley, then buy it and support the dev so it can become the game it deserves to be. Also, where's the white team to match the black team?